Hey, good morning, everybody. Do a quick video on the Gladiator real quick. Look, I watch a lot of YouTube car channels just like you guys do, and a lot of us see saying, hey, should you buy this car as a winter vehicle? Is it good in the winter? And they proceed to take us into the mountains and show us this an incredible off-road track where they're all in the snow and it's these big 5-foot drifts. Look, man, most of us don't drive that way. We just don't. Some of you get to do that. That's awesome for you. A majority of us that own this vehicle are going to drive it in the winter in cold weather. We don't have any snow right now. We were like the only place in the country up in New England that didn't get snow. We had 2 days of crazy rain, and now it's freezing, below freezing. It's like less than 20 degrees out. So what we're trying to do is I just want to share with you, hey, this is a real world version of why you'd want to buy that truck in the winter. So I'll walk through some pluses and minuses for you, and we'll come back at the end and say, should you buy this vehicle at the end? So talk to you in a second. All right. So one of the biggest common questions we get asked is the Gladiator or Wrangler a great winter vehicle? I think people associate Jeeps with great winter vehicles because of four-wheel drive, but there's been a pretty big consensus in the Northeast the last few years that all-wheel drive is preferable to four-wheel drive if you're just driving a vehicle for inclement weather like snow. And I can tell you, having owned four four-wheel drive vehicles. I've owned a Explorer that was four-wheel drive. I owned two Gladiators that were four-wheel drive. I owned a Wrangler that was four-wheel drive, and I've owned a Tundra, so I've actually owned 5. And I've owned 3 all-wheel drive vehicles. So I've owned an all-wheel drive Subaru Forester, an all-wheel drive Cadillac XTS sedan, and an all-wheel drive Dodge Charger. The benefit, obviously, in the four-wheel drive with the larger vehicles is the ground clearance with bad weather and snow. But I will tell you the downside is you hear, like you saw people talk about, like the binding of, so when you're turning in a four-wheel drive vehicle in a slow wheel radius, the axles kind of fight each other a little bit, and it's a really weird feeling. And as you're trying to pull into like tight spaces, my driveway's a little bit tight, and so if my wife and I are both parked in there with our fence, we have a retaining wall on one side and a fence on the other. It can be a little challenging with a four-wheel drive vehicle, especially if you start to slide at all. The other thing that's really interesting in these Jeeps is they tend to lose air pressure pretty quick. So almost every morning what you'll see is when I come out, I'm at like 32 or 33. By the end of the day, I'm at like 36. In the summertime, this will typically run like 38 to 40. Now, I haven't switched over. Most years, I've actually in previous vehicles. Now, this one I just got, you can see it's got like 2,400 miles on it. It's a 2022. I traded my 2020 in. Most years, I've actually swapped out the nitrogen in the tires, and I know this is big controversy around nitrogen. Does it perform better? Here's what I will tell you. I believe nitrogen 1,000% outperforms just putting regular air in your tires. The stability of the air pressure in the vehicle. Now, as I warm up, or if this car's in the sun, these off-road tires tend to have way more variations or fluctuations as they go through. But again, it still does a pretty good job. And this is, again, unless we get below 30, I won't get an air pressure light. So as long as I keep my air pressure around 40, during the days, it'll stay pretty regulated. Even on a cold night, again, we're at 19 right now. I've only driven the vehicle a short period of time. I did warm it up. And we've already gone up a pound or two of pressure as we're going through. But let's talk about why I think this is an awesome vehicle for a winter vehicle. So as you can see, I have my heated seat and steering wheel on right now. Those controls are down here. This is awesome. The heated seats work incredibly well. The heating steering wheel is great. It is an awesome heated steering wheel. It heats up very well. No issues. The climate controls are pretty intuitive, pretty easy to use, pretty easy to sync. It's pretty easy to go from the different grades. You can switch one or the other if you want to. It's super simple to sync, which is nice. Obviously, all your fluctuations between. And out of all the cars I've ever owned, from an auto standpoint, I think the auto heat standpoint, where if you just set a temperature and you try to get there, this is one of the best cars I've ever had for that setup. I think it just does an amazing job. Again, nice on this vehicle too. Obviously, the defroster works very well. You have the rear defrost for the hard top. So with the hard top, you have the rear defrost, so it's easy to live with. With the soft top, you don't, so the plastic can be a little funky sometimes you're dealing with. What I found a lot of times on the soft top is I'd have a light frost on that. So that would be the one thing I would tell you that was probably a little different, especially with the soft top. But again, navigating and using this vehicle in the winter is awesome. It's super easy. The remote start is really easy to use. Two clicks on the key fob, you got your remote start working. So as far as a winter vehicle goes, I would say the new Gladiators are great. Compared to everything else we've had, I've driven this or my older version, which is the exact same truck, the 2020 Rubicon, same tires, same wheel package, same everything. was great in the bad weather. So since I've had this, we've had one snowstorm, but it was very light. No problem, again, getting in and out of my street with this. It's pretty easy. I will tell you flat out, though, like if you're not going off-roading, like I didn't buy this for the snow. I bought it because it's good in snow. But if I were looking just strictly for a vehicle that was good in snow, I would personally buy an all-wheel drive car versus a four-wheel drive car. I just think that the driving capability, and I tell everybody this, the best car I ever owned by far for snow was my Subaru Forester. That thing was a tank in the snow. The second best car I ever owned was my Cadillac XTS sedan that I threw a set of Blizzaks on. So a really good set of snow tires was money. Those cars were great. All my other four-wheel drive cars are great. Again, when you're putting tires like this on, when I had my mud tires, so on my Wrangler two-door Sport, I had the Nitto trail grapplers, and those sucked in the snow. Like they would get into an area and would slide. These tend to be better. These are the Falcon Wild Peaks. These are actually pretty good. I found these to be a much better snow tire than the Nittos were for me personally, having used both in the same area. And on my street, I live on a pretty steep hill. So it wasn't getting up the hill. It was slowing down when I was going down the hill. The other cool thing on the new Gladiators versus having an older Jeep is obviously the flexibility. So if you get into here, you can go in and then switch to your manual mode. And you'll see it's relatively easy to shift up and down in manual mode. So you can shift. Again, it won't let you start above 2. But as you're driving down the street, instead of a low range like we've had years ago, it's pretty easy to shift into that low range. So as you're setting that up and you're trying to use your car, again, a cool thing, make sure you're using it. So if like I always shift down to first gear as I'm on my street that's fairly steep, it actually works great for me. So we'll answer the question for you. Should you buy this car as a winter vehicle in a cold weather state? Absolutely. If you've owned a Wrangler previously and you thought they kind of sucked because of the soft top, or they didn't get very warm, they didn't have the creature comforts like the heated seats, the heated steering wheel, buy a cold weather package on this, get the remote start, get the cold weather package if you can, the heated seats, heated steering wheel. The hard tops on these are awesome. They're quiet, they stay warm, they do a really nice job. The four-wheel drive system works well. Even in the new, mud version of these are really good. I would say better than the sport version with a basic version of tires. If you get a sport, throw a set of off-road or all-season, or at minimum all-season tires, but preferably a set of snow tires. This thing will become a mountain goat with some snow tires on a sport version. But even with the mud tires, which aren't the greatest because the snow tends to get into the tread, these still do a great job. So 100% recommend the Gladiator for the winter. If you haven't had one, or if you're thinking about getting one, you're a little hesitant, don't be afraid to get these. They're great. Having owned both the hardtop and the soft top on the Gladiator, it's only mildly better. The hardtop is slightly better. The rear defroster is awesome. Not having to worry about that frost on the back, plastic is great because it would take a while for that to defrost when I would use it. The big things to keep in mind: tire pressure, pay attention to it. Set your tires at the beginning of winter to the max tire pressure setting, so usually like 40 PSI, or throw nitrogen in, which again, I know is controversial. I know it was set up for sports cars originally, but it works awesome for regulation. You have less fluctuation, so that's great too. Get the cold weather package if at all possible. And if you are really focused on the cold weather versus the warm weather, the hardtop is absolutely the way to go. So that's it. I hope you enjoy the content. If you haven't done so far, please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.